Alrighty, so there goes. It's starting. Mom, Dad, and Tania. Hello, my name is Tori Golden, and my topic for the informative presentation is Juneteenth. Starting off, a little bit of background about Juneteenth. Juneteenth was, the background is that we had a civil war. And during that civil war, it was against the northern states or the northern colonies in America and the southern colonies in America. And the main dividing line between the two was the economic well being of both parts of the United States. The southern states were more known for having the slaves drive their economic prosperity, whereas the northern part wasn't so agricultural. They were moving closer towards the industrial age, and also slaves were free in the northern part of the United States. And basically, what happened is we had a war, and the northern states ended up winning, and they were known as the Union, and the southern states were known as the Confederacy. The president at the time, or the leader of the Union, was Abraham Lincoln. And after we had won the war, he wrote into government a document, and the document was called the Emancipation Proclamation. This proclamation is what set all of the slaves free. And just a quote, it says, "For centuries, slaves was the dark stain on America's soul, the deep contradiction to a nation's founding ideals of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." So to Abraham Lincoln, he felt like the slaves, although it wasn't a fight about the slaves, they did play a very large part in the betterment of America as a whole, moving forward as a union. So he freed the slaves. However, in Texas, which is on the southwestern part of the hemisphere, they didn't know that they were free until approximately 20 or so years later. And that's where Juneteenth comes from. Basically, Juneteenth is a day in Arlington, Texas, to be specific, that the slaves found out that they were free. The Emancipation Proclamation was signed into government on January 1st, 1863. However, it was 2 years later, Arlington, Texas found out on June 19th, 1865. And there's a lot of discrepancy about why they found out late. One of the reasons that was suggested as to why they found out late about them being freed was that the original messenger that was sent died and was killed, because even after the Union won, there were still some people who were still for slavery. And as a result, they didn't really want to free their slaves yet. And another suggestion was that they wanted to wait for the last crop to come and to be harvested before they let their slaves know that they were free. And just a quote pertaining to that, it says, one of the slaves that was found after the Emancipation Proclamation states that you can see a lot of African Americans, or then referred to as Negroes, hanging from trees, and they were also found in the rivers because they were being killed because they weren't told that they were free yet. And also, research also said that there were a lot of African American slaves who did not leave the plantation, and they really didn't know how to feel about it because they didn't know if it was true or not. And in today's age, it's almost difficult for us to understand not finding out information about what's going on, per se, in California, or what would be going on in Arizona until 2 years later. So back then, the message that was going along kind of traveled very slowly. And I can understand why it would take about 2 years, because the travel then was only by horse. And anyone who's, had a horse understands that horses can only go so far before, they pass out or they pass away because of the amount of strain that they go through in traveling across the country. So, what is Juneteenth today? Well, Juneteenth is basically celebrated in more of the southern states, like I said, and specifically in Texas, and more so in Arlington, Texas, is where it began. And it's celebrated there because that's where it began. It kind of died down. The celebration did die down around the Great Depression because of a lack of funding, and it was just a really difficult time economically for the United States. So that kind of stopped, but it picked back up around the late 1960s, around that time. But what it is it's basically festivals, it's celebration, it's remembering our history. There are parades, there are carnivals, and that's all about trying to educate those in this generation that do not know about what Juneteenth is, more about their history. And basically, what this video has discussed is what is Juneteenth. Juneteenth is a celebration of African American freedom for those who are last freed, and the last that were freed were those that were in Arlington, Texas, on June 19th in 1865. Do we still celebrate this? Do we still celebrate this history today? Yes, not as a nation, but in our own separate parts and in our own separate entities, yes, we do. It is not considered a national holiday, but in certain areas, it is considered a holiday to them. So in Texas, it is considered a holiday that is on the calendar yearly. I'd like to thank you so much for listening to my presentation on Juneteenth. And I hope that you have learned something more than what you have known before about African American history. And I hope that you have a great day.